My name is Stephen Okey, and I am an assistant professor of theology at St. Leo University. One thing I find with many students I talk to is that they feel almost addicted to their phones. They derive great pleasure from what the phones make possible, but they also feel worn out and distracted, almost as if they can't get away from the phones. Just yesterday, actually, I was speaking to a senior in one of my classes in my office, and she was expressing this frustration with not being able to get away from her phone, with always feeling distracted and pulled away. And she wanted to know what are some ways that I can challenge, this cycle of distraction. It's helpful, I think, to look at our life with technology by thinking about virtue. So virtues are good moral habits that we develop through regularly acting in good ways. Like any habit, virtue takes practice, it takes repetition in order to develop. So if I am to be an honest person, then I need to consistently tell the truth. I need to make it a habit of telling the truth. Then, when I encounter situations where telling the truth might be difficult, it's much easier to do so if I have that virtue. The virtue inclines me to act in a particular way. And the Greek philosopher Aristotle taught us that we find virtue in the mean, or the middle, between an excess and a deficiency. So if, for example, we think of courage or bravery as a virtue, then we are looking at how we handle difficulty, how we handle adversity well. A deficiency then would be someone who is cowardly, who is unable to manage their fear sufficiently in order to face difficulty. On the side of excess, someone who is unthinking and rash and just charges in without any thought for the danger that really exists would be too much. Courage, like all virtues, seeks the mean between these two extremes. So when it comes to living with contemporary technology, when it comes to my student who is distracted by her phone, there's certainly value to the classical virtues like courage, like justice, like prudence. But the one that I think is most relevant is temperance. We tend to think of temperance as having to do with drinking alcohol, which is really because there were temperance movements in the early 20th century and that led to prohibition. But temperance goes far beyond alcohol. It includes any of the things that give us pleasure. It could be food, could be sex, could be recreation. All of these are things for which temperance tells us that we should have a moderate, reasonable desire and a moderate, reasonable enjoyment of these pleasures. So technology, too, can be a source of pleasure, whether that's binge watching Netflix or playing Candy Crush on my phone. But especially today, when we are surrounded by our devices, when we are always with them, when we rely on them to protect us from even fleeting boredom, there's a real challenge to not be excessive about our enjoyment of technology. In particular, the excessive, intemperate desire we have for technology, for having it always on, always accessible, always in our face. That this, while we try to alleviate our passing boredom, this can also discourage us from other valuable, wonderful pleasures, like enjoying nature or talking to the people that are around us. I find that when I walk into my classroom, students are rarely ever chatting with one another, but are just glued to the phone. So it's certainly possible to enjoy our technology virtuously. I think technology is a wonderful thing, but it means that we need to learn ways to be more moderate and more attentive about how much of our time and really how much of our lives we're giving to technology. Ultimately, continuous distraction is itself a habit, but not a terribly good habit. And developing the virtue of temperance with respect to our technology is a really great way to counter that.